Nate Moore, don't lie on widows. Don't stretch the truth, don't bend realities. Earlier today, I saw your interview on Blacktree TV. Here it is. The audio is going to be fuzzy, but try your best to listen to the EP answer a question about Wakanda Forever and what to do after Chad's death, and try to put this on a widow, who I have receipts of her telling us that she had nothing to do with this decision. They've decided before. Go ahead.
I know Black Panther and what's happened with Chad is like, it's been some time, but as an EP, on the business side of that tragedy, did you think that y'all would be able to move on with that franchise?
Not necessarily. I mean, it was obviously a shocking loss because Chad was such a big part of that character, even in Civil War, and people make movies. You have an emotional attachment to people, and so Coogler and I certainly had really hard conversations initially of whether or not we just had it in us to go back to that world. And we talked to Chad's widow, actually, who kind of inspired us to keep going because she understood in the way that Chad did, probably more than any of us.
Let's pause right there. Me and Coogler were talking. We didn't know if we should go back to the world. And we talked to Chad's widow. Do you mean, or do you want me to be believing that you mean that after your conversation with Chadwick Boseman's widow, Simone, that you guys decided to go on with Wakanda Forever, end T'Challa's life, do all these things? Because that's the way you worded it. You said one thing first, you said the next thing later, allowing the audience to think that he's like, this is such a fake. It's like, well, I didn't lie. I didn't say that Simone told us to do this. I'm just saying that, she inspired us. You mean like after you guys did all the decisions, then you probably had an inspirational phone call with her, right? That's what you actually mean, right? Don't lie. Let's rewind it. Listen to how he words it in the order of sequence that this happens.
Coogler and I certainly had really hard conversations initially of whether or not we just had it in us to go back to that world. And we talked to Chad's widow, actually, who kind of inspired us to keep going because she understood in the way that Chad did, probably more than any of us, frankly, how much that franchise and the world of Wakanda meant to people. And then you just have to figure out how you move on without doing something that feels sort of counter to the emotions you're feeling.
You talk to Chad's widow, and then you have to figure out how do you move on with the feelings. You don't want to be counter to your emotions. We talked to Chad's widow, and then we decided, no, how do we move on? That is not the order of things happen. I can prove it. Here is the official Wakanda Forever podcast, Chapter 6. Simone Lidward Boseman was being interviewed by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Let's hear how she answered this question right here around 33 minutes.
I want to fast forward a little bit, and I want to ask, because I know you guys had conversations about how to proceed forward after Chad passed. I just want to ask, like, Simone, at what point were you able to even contemplate, or did you even contemplate, T'Challa had been so much of him invested in it. And so he is, he's a franchise player. You know what I'm saying? Like, how that franchise would proceed, whether it even should proceed. Like, when did those thoughts enter your mind? Were you considering that at all?
So Ta-Nehisi Coates is asking her a very recast T'Challa question. And she's about to give us information that disproves what Nate Moore was lying about.
Honestly, it was the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And the only thoughts that I had about it were around how Chad was feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
Smart.
And just how much it hurt him that he wasn't going to be able to be a part of that. And after he passed, it was, really, really quickly the question that's on all of the fans' minds, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And it was pretty soon after his transition that...
Pretty soon?
The team? Kevin, Nate, Ryan had said that they were not going to recast him. Time is a blur, so I don't know how, how soon exactly after. And I remember talking to Chad's management team about it.
I'll skip this part.
And it's not just about the business, right? Because it's almost now multi-billion-dollar franchise, and that that story has to continue, and it should. And while I try to not speak for Chad, I know it's not something he would have wanted to end because he transitioned. Right. But
that was an important part. She knows he would have not wanted it to end just because he transitioned. We've got Derek Boseman. Derek Boseman, tell me what you said.
Chad was Chad. T'Challa is just a character. When Christopher Reeves had the accident, they didn't stop having Superman.
And then we got Simone Boseman also recognizing the same thing. Now, let's keep listening, understandably. That's not something that she's going to enjoy. It's going to be a difficult conversation to have. But the last thing she'll tell us is that Namor is a liar.
The thought of somebody, else just kind of coming in and playing that role, it wasn't something that I wanted to entertain. So I was really grateful that none of us had to.
None of us had to.
Because that decision was made.
I don't think Nate Moore should have invoked Chad's widow's name when he's talking about the plans to do Wakanda forever. She didn't have to entertain it because you guys already made the decisions coming out of her own mouths. And I'm the most RecastTChalla guy there is on YouTube. I, of course, understand everything she's going through, her emotions, her pauses, her everything that she's going to be experiencing if another actor starts playing T'Challa is logical to me. It's logical to her. She gets it. But she came through with telling us that's not something Chadwick would have wanted after he transitioned. This is all on the studio. This creative decision has nothing to do with his family. Nate Moore, don't lie, don't bend the truth, don't stretch realities. The point of this here is to defend the Boseman family and highlight the ilk of one Nate Moore, who is not going to be recasting T'Challa. His plan is to age up that little boy. What was his name, Nakia?
This is my son, Toussaint.
Toussaint, thank you. The plan of Nate Moore, Ryan Coogler, and Kevin Feige is to rapidly age the Toussaint character, cast an adult to play him, and say this is your Black Panther. Not recast T'Challa. They have iced that character. For reasons unknown to man, they will not be using T'Challa. They're not going to another universe to use T'Challa. They're going to use Toussaint instead over T'Challa. It is not too late to change their minds, but that is the reports going out. That's the report. That's it. I can't even speak right. We're at that point where my blood is boiling. Toussaint is who they want to use. Oh, you think he's too young? Let's get him a little older, put him in the quantum realm, hyperbolic time chamber. Now he's back. And he's old enough. Everyone's going to call him T'Challa. What's the difference? A non-comic book character with no foundation. A character who there's no promise to use him again. We're not going to see him in video games, books. This guy is not guaranteed to still exist the same way the Black Panther is. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be elevating an IP which never existed until you invented him in 2022. Use T'Challa. Find him for another universe. Go to the quantum realm. Go get the version Chadwick Boseman played. Ancestral plane. There's so many options. They have 2-3 years to decide whether or not they're going to end this franchise on a whimper, or they're going to do what Chadwick Boseman would have never asked you not to do, and that is to continue the portrayal of T'Challa and elevate him while celebrating Chad Boseman the same way that we celebrate Christopher Reeve. There's an interesting video on, not DVD, but there's an interesting documentary of Christopher Reeve that you should check out on Max to understand how he could be the progenitor of the character, and you're dishonoring him when you use him as the gatekeeper. Toussaint is not the answer. RecastTChalla rejects it. I'm out.